The courtroom buzzes with the usual pretrial activity. Lawyers are making last-minute preparations. Witnesses are being called into the waiting area, and the judge's gavel is heard periodically as she manages the flow of cases. Clintwood enters the courtroom, standing tall despite the weight of the situation. He's facing a minor charge, but as a black man in a predominantly white court, he knows the underlying dynamics are never just about the case. The courtroom looks down on him, not for what he's done, but for the color of his skin and the way he presents himself. Judge Victoria Langley is at the bench, tall, blonde, and middle-aged. She's been known for her tough demeanor and unyielding approach, but today she seems eager to assert her power in a more personal way. As Malcolm Carter approaches the stand, she eyes him with a scrutinizing gaze. It's not the usual routine for the judge to look over a defendant's appearance so critically, but there's something in the way she stares at Malcolm Carter's long locks, his free locks, as they're sometimes called, that rubs him the wrong way. The moment the proceedings begin, she dismisses his appearance with a casual, insulting comment, calling it unprofessional and unsettling. She compares his hair to a distraction that's far from fitting for the courtroom. The remark is not lost on Malcolm Carter, and few members of the gallery can be heard shifting in their seats uncomfortably. Judge Langley continues, saying, "How do you expect to be taken seriously looking like that?" Her voice drips with condescension, making it clear she doesn't see his hairstyle as an expression of his culture or personality, but as something to ridicule. The tension in the courtroom grows. Malcolm Carter, initially stunned, takes a deep breath. This isn't his first time facing racial prejudice, but he's used to subtle insults rather than blatant mockery. However, the difference today is clear. The insults are being delivered from a position of authority. Malcolm Carter isn't simply a defendant being judged for his actions. He's being judged for his identity. And this judge, who is supposed to impartially uphold the law, is actively engaging in racial discrimination. The gallery's silence echoes in his ears. There's a clear sense of discomfort building, but Malcolm Carter keeps his composure. He feels the sting of her words, but more than that, he feels the anger rising inside of him. This is no longer just about his case. It's about a much larger issue, the systemic racism that black people, especially in professional settings, are constantly subjected to. Malcolm Carter's mind races as Judge Langley continues her line of questioning. Her mocking tone echoes in his mind, and the more she speaks, the harder it becomes to maintain his composure. He's been in situations like this before, where his very existence feels like a problem to others. He's had people question his intelligence, his ambitions, and even his presence in spaces that aren't meant for people like him. But in this moment it's different. This isn't just some casual, isolated instance of prejudice. This is happening in front of a room full of people. It's happening in the very place where justice should be dispensed impartially. Judge Langley's insults about his hair morph into something even worse. She's not just commenting on his appearance anymore. She begins to insinuate that people like him, people of his type, don't belong in this courtroom unless they conform to the expected standards of behavior and appearance. This court is about law, not whatever this is. She scoffs, gesturing dismissively at his hair. Her words pierce deeper than she realizes. Clintwood has faced racism before, but it was usually outside of professional spaces. In the workplace, he had learned to navigate prejudice carefully, finding ways to prove his worth. He had learned to rise above it. But in this courtroom, a place that's supposed to represent fairness, he feels his rights being violated. This woman, an authority figure, is using her position to degrade him. There's a shift inside Malcolm Carter. The anger that had been bubbling beneath the surface begins to take shape. For too long, he's let people like Judge Langley make him feel small. But not today. He stands taller, pushing back the flood of emotions, and takes a deep breath. It's time to confront her. He interrupts her, his voice steady but firm. "I'm not here to be your personal punching bag, Judge Langley. I'm here because you're supposed to listen to my case, not judge my identity." The courtroom goes quiet. The words hang in the air. Judge Langley's eyes narrow, and she tries to dismiss Malcolm Carter's comments with a casual wave. But it's clear that something has shifted. Her usual commanding presence in the room is faltering. This is the first time she's been challenged, directly and unapologetically. Malcolm Carter presses on. You are in a position of power, Judge, but don't mistake your authority for permission to disrespect people based on their appearance. At that moment, Clintwood realizes the full weight of what he's doing. This is no longer just a courtroom dispute. This is about standing up against a system that has for too long allowed people like Judge Langley to abuse their power. His anger isn't just personal anymore, it's collective. It's the anger of every black man and woman who has ever been judged unfairly for the way they look, the way they speak, or the way they choose to live. As Malcolm Carter stands there, the room seems to hold its breath. The judge, clearly irritated, tries to regain control of the situation, but she doesn't realize the power of what Malcolm Carter has just done. By speaking up, Malcolm Carter has taken the power back from her. But he knows the moment has come to make it clear that he is not just any defendant. He's a man who has the knowledge and tools to hold her accountable. In a calm but commanding voice, Malcolm Carter announces his identity, one that instantly changes the dynamic in the room. For the record, Judge Langley, he begins, I'm not just a random defendant. I'm an attorney. I specialize in civil rights law, and I've handled many cases dealing with racial discrimination in judicial proceedings. The courtroom is stunned. Judge Langley's expression falters, her usual smugness vanishing for the briefest of moments. The gasps from the gallery are almost audible as they realize the man they were all watching with a degree of judgment is not only capable of defending himself, but could very well be their advocate in cases just like this. Malcolm Carter continues, You are in clear violation of my civil rights. Your comments about my appearance aren't just unprofessional. They're racially discriminatory. I've worked on cases where people have lost their careers for much less, and I won't let you do this to me or anyone else. The atmosphere in the room shifts dramatically. Judge Langley, once the authoritative figure, now finds herself in the position of the accused. She tries to regain control of the situation, attempting to speak over Malcolm Carter, but it's too late. Her voice trembles, and she struggles to come up with a suitable rebuttal. The realization hits her like a ton of bricks. Malcolm Carter's words are not only backed by experience, but by the law itself. The tension in the courtroom reaches a boiling point. Malcolm Carter has effectively turned the tables on Judge Langley. Once the supreme authority in the room, she is now the one who seems small and powerless. The control she once had over the proceedings has slipped through her fingers. Her reaction is immediate. She tries to dismiss Malcolm Carter's words as irrelevant and accuses him of disrupting the court. But the damage has been done. The attorney sitting beside her looks at her nervously, and even the prosecutor gives her an uneasy glance. The murmurs from the gallery have grown louder, and it's clear that the support she once commanded is slipping away. The legal professionals in the room, who had silently observed the entire exchange, are beginning to question her judgment and ethics. Judge Langley's attempt to regain control only makes matters worse. She waves her hands, dismissing Malcolm Carter's identity as a lawyer, trying to deflect attention back to the case at hand. But Malcolm Carter isn't about to let her change the subject. He pushes further, explaining that as a civil rights lawyer, he has seen firsthand how judges like her can abuse their power without accountability. He names specific cases in which racist judges were removed from the bench for misconduct. This only adds to the sense of urgency in the room. As her panic sets in, Judge Langley begins to stutter. Her previously polished and confident demeanor is now replaced by a frantic search for a way to salvage her position. But Malcolm Carter, with calculated precision, makes his move. He tells the court that he's already made arrangements to file a formal complaint with the Bar Association, the Judicial Oversight Committee, and the state's Attorney General. The realization of what he has just done weighs heavily on her. The walls are closing in. She attempts to assert her authority one last time, but it's too late. She has been publicly exposed, and the courtroom sees her for what she truly is: prejudiced, unprofessional, and unfit to preside over cases involving marginalized communities. It becomes clear that the courtroom is no longer a place where Judge Langley can wield her power unchecked. The prosecutor stands up, reluctantly agreeing that Malcolm Carter's complaint needs to be taken seriously. The clerk begins to take detailed notes, and the atmosphere in the room grows more somber. Judge Langley's attempts to steer the proceedings in her favor are falling flat, as the room has shifted its allegiance. In the following moments, an officer enters the courtroom. There's no dramatic fanfare, but the implications of the officer's arrival are unmistakable. The officer, who has been listening quietly from the back, approaches the judge and reads her the charges: racial discrimination, violation of a defendant's civil rights, and misconduct while presiding over a case. The room holds its breath as the judge, stunned and speechless, is escorted from the bench in handcuffs. As Judge Langley is let out of the courtroom, her face is a mask of disbelief and humiliation. She had spent years in this position of power, relying on her position and privilege to shield her from any consequences. But today karma came swiftly. As Malcolm Carter watches Judge Langley being escorted out of the courtroom, a quiet sense of justice fills the air. The crowd that had once been uncomfortable now seems to share in his victory. For once the power dynamics in the courtroom have been disrupted by a man who refused to be silenced. As Judge Langley is taken away, Malcolm Carter stands tall. His calm demeanor hides the exhilaration he feels inside. This moment isn't just about him. It's about sending a message. No one, regardless of their position, is above accountability. Malcolm Carter's decision to confront Judge Langley in the moment wasn't just for his own vindication. It was a statement. This was about making sure that no one else would have to endure the kind of abuse he had just experienced. And though the immediate consequence of his actions is Judge Langley's arrest, the true impact will be felt far beyond this courtroom. The systemic racism embedded in the justice system needs to be uprooted. And today, Clintwood had taken the first step in making that change. The case ends with a ripple of hope. The once powerful judge, now in handcuffs, is no longer a symbol of authority, but of the consequences of unchecked prejudice. Clintwood's victory is a reminder that even in the most oppressive systems, the truth and justice has a way of prevailing.